single
What do you
net.
mean Southern Prince George's County?
Okay, it's now 7:12. I'm calling the meeting to order. We have the pledge of allegiance led by
Maybe 15 minutes.
Thank you everyone for attending this meeting. We will start with the reading of the last minutes, the last general meeting.
The meeting was March 23rd. Meeting was held at Greenbelt Community Center. Cat led us in the pledge. Meeting minutes for February 21st were read. Cat made a motion to approve the minutes, and Pat Wickersley seconded the motion. President called for the vote. Motion passes. Treasurer's report. Beginning balance $7,260.82. Withdrawals of $35 for the website. Pending deposit from Nation Builders is $450.22. Reconciled total of $7,776.11. There's a motion to accept the Treasurer's report by Pat Wickersley and a second by Cat Coma. Motion passed. Old business. The Executive Board approved an expenditure of $200 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in an effort to win back the House of Representatives. There was a motion by Jay Davis, second by Kurt Walter, to send $200 to the DCCC. The President, after any questions, hearing none, the motion passes. Other items of interest. Noted April 5th, hands-off day of action against Trump administration policies. Discuss the importance of our Democratic Club as one of only a few active in Prince George's County. Guest speaker, Joanne Braxton. Joanne Braxton is president of the Braxton Institute for Sustainable Resiliency and Joy and a former professor at William & Mary University. Personal background. Fourth generation resident of Lakewood, Maryland. One of the first black students to attend Greenbelt High School. Shared memories of experiencing integration and racial tensions. Discussed her academic journey and returned to advocate for her community. Dr. Braxton introduced various people supporting her efforts. The Braxton Institute founded with former students after Trayvon Martin's killing. Creates collective strategies to repair and heal hearts, supports historically oppressed communities, uses education, arts, and ritual and spiritual practices, focuses on sustainability, resiliency, and joy in dangerous times, Lakeland history and urban renewal. Lakeland was originally designed as a streetcar suburb for white residents. After white residents began leaving, black families purchased homes. In 1945, Lakeland was incorporated into College Park against residents' wishes. Vote was 173 to 9 against. Urban renewal plans initiated in 1968 promised improvements in 3 years, but actually took over 10 years and destroyed much of the community. Single-family homes were replaced with Section 8 housing. The housing was redeveloped on the east side of the tracks. The community was cut off from the lake that gave it its name. Restorative justice efforts. In 2020, the City of College Park issued a formal apology to the Lakeland community. Restorative Justice Commission established in 2022. University of Maryland Planning Studio engaged with Lakelanders. Scholarship Fund established for those impacted by urban renewal. Community Land Trust giving priority to former Lakeland residents. Concepts discussed: root shock, profound emotional trauma that from the displacement, weathering hypothesis, health impacts of chronic stress and displacement, moral injury, harm caused by betrayal of what was right by those in authority. Additional announcements: Martin Mitchell announcing community resource pop-up at Beltway Plaza offering legal aid services, help with expungement, immigration assistance, estate planning, wellness. Mitchell also announced he's running for office, possibly county council. Louise announced immigration justice march action starting at the Methodist Church. Discussion of Second Look Act for incarcerated individuals. Town hall on Thursday with city administration. Mayor Pro Tem Kristen Weaver described the Bernie Sanders AOC rally in Greeley, Colorado. They drew 11,000 to 16,000 people. The meeting reflected strong concerns about current political challenges, while emphasizing community solidarity, historical justice, and organized political action. Wishbox, a member, commented that all three bills sponsored by CASA have passed in Maryland. She also advocated for a bill that would cause a person who had been incarcerated for 20 years to go before a judge who would determine if that person is ready for release. Jay Davis thanks everyone for their kindness and flowers after the passing of her partner Neil. A member suggested that members should call Republican representatives about what is going on. This could overwhelm Republican officials. She also informed us that a bill introduced by Jamie Raskin would call back our personal information from Dodge. Emmett pointed out that what we do as a club is important and translates throughout the county. Almost done. Dr. Braxton encouraged us to form our communities of resistance, to love one another, and also to love those that resist our efforts. There's a motion by President Gerard to adjourn the meeting, and second by Jenny Pompey. President calls for vote. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned at 4:32 p.m. Next executive board meeting will be April 6th. Next regular meeting will be, here it says April 18th, but obviously it's tonight, April 25th. And that's it.
All right, any comments about the minutes of the meeting?
I move to accept the minutes.
It was seconded. Let's vote to approve the minutes of the meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion to approve the minutes is carried. We'll have now the treasurer's report by Emmett.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Emmett Jordan, and I've got the honor of serving as the club's treasurer this year. So I'd like to go ahead and share with you the financial report for March of 2025, March the 1st through the 31st. So we have our account, our banking account with the Bank of America, and we started off the month with $7,360.88. Throughout the month, we had several withdrawals for $296.60. So that brought us to the end of the month to a balance of $7,064.28. I have a hard time with my contact lenses. So we've been trying to increase our marketing efforts. So the money that we spent actually went to $261.60 to payments to the Greenbelt News Review. We ran 2 ads for the program with Dr. Braxton, which is a very interesting program. Also, that was a Sunday afternoon, so we felt that it was important to try and do some additional advertising above and beyond the email blasts that go out. So also there was the regular $35 fee for our Nation Builder account. Nation Builder is they provide us with a website, and they also provide us with the capacity to accept electronic payments. But there's a little snag with them, so we've got a pending balance of $415.23. Also, I was a little late in getting the money from the Wishbox membership fee into the bank, which is $64. So to kind of reconcile, to wrap things up, I could just talk about this treasurer's report all day long. I'm not going to do that. So with the bank, we ended up with a balance of $7,064.28. There was $64 deposited from the last this meeting, and there is still $415.23 sitting in the nation builder account. So the reconciled total is $7,543.51. So we've been spending a bit. We've been fortunate to kind of build up a pretty good bank balance over the years. And the reason why we do that is we have to prepare for the Greenbelt Labor Day Festival. We have a booth there, and that's our main fundraising tool for the year. So we have been, the main thing we've been spending money on this year is just marketing and advertising. Now, the executive board has been looking at the idea of doing another baseball game fundraiser in late May, and we would be been investigating the possibility of doing that in conjunction with the Young Men's Democratic Club. We did that last year. Worked out really well, except on the day of the game, it poured down rain, the game was canceled. We raced it in the park. So we're looking at possibly doing that in May, maybe on the 28th. That's coming up pretty fast. We're looking into that as a fundraiser. We need to find a way to raise a little bit more money. It's such difficult times for Democrats and really for everybody in Greenbelt and District 22 and around the whole country. So in order to do the things that we need to do, we need to find ways to raise some more money. So that's my treasurer's report. I'm sticking with it.
Have you heard anything from CARE that they need more?
Oh, they definitely need money. The city.
It's such a tough time right now for so many people.
That's very, very true. The club traditionally, with money from the wish box, which we raise each meeting, we donate a good part of all that money back to the city of Greenbelt's Emergency Relief Fund, which is a one-time emergency fund that's available for assistance, rental assistance, or mortgage assistance. When I say one time, if somebody applies for it, they're only eligible one time to receive the funding. They have to be able to demonstrate that they're going to be able to stay in their home. So it's a sustainability thing. And I'm just speaking as an individual, not as the mayor of the city. So that Greenbelt Emergency Relief Fund is a very practical way of helping people who can help themselves. And they are always looking for funds. And you're exactly right. They are very, very short on funds again. I don't know if you'd like to make a motion, Pat, to actually make another one of those donations to the fund. You can certainly do that.
And I was wondering if it's just rental assistance service like that, they'll also for some food assistance and other stuff that they are.
I believe it is. There's an individual in the room here who could probably tell you more about that. And her name is Jay Davis.
I was dozing off, I'm sorry. What was the question?
The Emergency Relief Fund, the Greenbelt Cares Emergency.
Yeah.
Pat was asking the question about how it can be used.
How's it used? If it's, Emmett was mentioning that it's for rent, to help people with their rent, but I was wondering if it also helps with Petco or food or other needs.
Not necessarily.
There are other
Funds
ones.
for that. There's other funds for that, because the city does help some of the food pantries, at least with ARPA funds. We donated to a lot of the food pantries in the area, and also, I believe, paid for food distributions. Now, without the ARPA money, that has calmed down. But that emergency fund is mainly for people who are a little short on rent, and it's not to help them from being evicted necessarily, but it could. And people can bounce back again. They kind of ask if you can maybe pay some of it back, and of course people usually do that. There's another fund that helps people who are getting trouble with gas or something like that if they're traveling through the city.
Mhm.
And I don't know which fund that is, but there's another fund.
Okay, well, I'd be glad to research it and get back to us for the next meeting.
Well, if you feel the need to do that, but you are exactly correct. These times that we're living in right now, I was talking with the city manager Solomon. He was saying that about 14% of our residents in Greenbelt are federal employees. And and you know, another 10, 15% are likely federal contractors. So with so many federal workers being laid off, and the ones that are provisional, it's just, we expect that it's going to be difficult for many people in the next year, the next few years to come. So I like your suggestion. If I wasn't the treasurer, I would just make a motion to make another donation. Maybe you'd like to make a motion.
We got over 7,000 people.
Oh, we got, I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add to what Jay Davis said, because the way the city manager and the treasurer set it up, that even though we had to allocate the ARPA money by December of last year, they actually set it up so that we continue our contribution to the food banks through the end of when we can spend the ARPA money in December of 2026. So we actually, even though we can't change our allocations for ARPA, they did set up contracts to be able to continue that extra support for the food banks. And I don't remember the details off the top of my head, but Josue knows them, and they, you know, I give credit to him and Bertha Gavin, the treasurer, for figuring out how to do that. So we are continuing some of the extra support, even though technically the ARPA money had to all have been not technically, it had to all have been allocated, but it's still being spent. So.
Now, in case you didn't know, the ARPA money, that's the American Rescue Plan funding that President Biden put into place to help us recover from COVID impacts of COVID directly to the city of Greenbelt. So we're going to continue food distributions and a bunch of other programs with that money. And that's kind of separate from the emergency relief fund that we donate to the Wish Box. We've been doing that for years. I'll go ahead, Pat, you seem skeptical. I'd like to make a motion that we donate $200 to the city's emergency relief fund from our Wish Box. No, you can't. The ARPA program is a federal funding program. No, you can't.
Okay. Just wanted to check.
I second it.
Second it? Okay.
Okay.
Question?
I want to help people too. This is a Democratic club. We need to get Democrats elected. That's what we're about. That's what we're for. We passed a motion to have $200 sent to the DCC, and if it's going to do that, I'm not opposed to the Greenbelt Emergency Fund, but we're a Democratic club. We need to get Democrats elected. That's why we exist. That's why we're here.
Yes, sir.
$200, we could go pass the hat around here and raise $200 tonight. And perhaps rather than dipping into the fund, which is really to elect Democrats, we could do that. So we serve both purposes.
If I could, Sylvia Lewis, that's exactly what we did. We passed the Wish Box right on. We had education relief. So, I mean, if we can raise $200 tonight in that Wish Box, that would make this whole discussion a moot point. So maybe if everybody digs in, if you got it, give it.
Didn't we, as a club, already donate $500 to the emergency fund just about 2 months ago?
Yeah, yes, we did.
So it isn't like we haven't done anything. We have been donating all along. This will be just an extra something.
These are some difficult times we're going through. Mr. President, what do you want to do?
You want to take a vote or just pass around this and see how much we can get?
Let's take a vote.
Let's take a vote. Who wants to do this? Those in favor of the motion to donate to this emergency funds, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say no. The ayes have it, so we're going to do it. Yes, Jerry.
Do you have any sense of what the date is?
There's a huge need. There's not enough fund. there's not enough money available that to really help people. And given the fact that the rents in the metropolitan area, it's around $2,000 a month in apartments. So if someone is behind on the rent, they might be 2 or 3 months behind, which would mean they would need like $6,000 or so. So the balance, there is not, from what I heard 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was not enough money in there. It was not $6,000.
That's just one person.
That's just one person. So I mean, there's always a need, and it'd be great to be able to help anyone who has a problem.
Okay.
And what's going to happen in the future is probably even worse because of the attacks on Goddard Space Flight Center, which the Orange Menace wants to close and move people to Houston. So, that is going to take out a lot of people in Goddard, whether they are workers, employees, or contractors. And a lot of them live in the Greenbelt area. So it's going to accumulate more. I don't know when it's going to end. His popularity on the polls is going down, and it doesn't seem to be making any difference to how he's acting.
Are you going to say something, Conrad?
On this,
Come on now.
so that I can be heard.
Yeah.
All right. This also makes me think about not only the needs are obviously greater, but the other Democratic clubs in our area, are they making similar types of contributions? And if not, then we should urge that they do.
I don't know the answer to that question. I assume they are, but jointly doing this fundraiser with the Young Men's Democratic Club, we did pretty well with that baseball fundraiser last year, mostly because of their efforts. When we agreed to try and do this fundraiser with the Bowie Bay Sox, the club had to commit to selling a number of tickets. So they sold many more tickets than we did. So the event was very profitable. So this year, if we're going to do this, we need to commit to selling a good number of tickets. If we had a baseball game with the Bowie, it's Chesapeake Bay Sox that usually games. On a beautiful Saturday night, the moon will be rising, it will be nice and warm. Afterwards, there'll be fireworks. So how many of you would buy a ticket, maybe 2, to that kind of event? Look at all those hands going up, man. So all kidding aside, we need to decide if we're going to do that. We would need to decide on how many tickets. So we have to pay for the ticket, and then there's a profit margin where it's a fundraiser, so it's set up so we can make a little bit of money. And not only would it be a beautiful night out there, you would get Baysock bucks, and you'd be able to get a soda, hot dog, 2 hot dogs, or a veggie burger, potato chips. Choices for just everything. It's a great deal. Okay, I think I see a question.
I don't know, understand. You can't get to the Baysock ballpark, which is the stadium, by bus. So if you're going to be doing this, how are you accompanying it? You're going to have to carpool or arrange otherwise for transportation. The county's planning department is putting together its master plan of transportation. The county department of public works and transportation is about to issue its transit vision plan. Neither plans envision having a bus to the ballpark. To get to the ballpark, there's a bus a mile away, and for kids or slow adults like myself, we've got to cross 301. It's not conducive to public safety. So I would hope whatever transportation is arranged to go for the Roosevelt Club housing, we do what we can to push the county and the state of Nevada to provide the public transportation to Walpole.
Well, Thank you. In the past, we have carpool. We'll do it again. Somebody who needs a ride, I'm sure we'll do it once in a while.
All right, I can do a carpool. Any other comments? Yes, Conrad.
I was just going to say that in order to get the ball rolling, there was a chart that is sent out to everybody on the board, but everybody that's a member of the club send a notice that you are interested in coming on the last Saturday in May, so that then we can all kind of coordinate together and get the most energy out of this effort. And it's not something that is going to be done at the last minute.
Isn't that
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion? Do you want to decide it now?
Make a
You want to
motion.
decide it now? In this meeting? You want this decided now, what your suggestion?
Yes, just to
Okay.
coordinate, and then, because Evan and I can work together. They can say, here's the feedback.
The motion is May 28th. It's the day. You're going to have a
Yes.
May-size game.
Well,
Second.
we need to kind of check in with the Young Men's Democratic Club to firm that up since we want it in conjunction. But I'll take that as guidance in talking with them, if you'll allow me to. So, but we could take a vote on whether or not to do a baseball game fundraiser this year. Yeah.
Wasn't there a question about the dates, maybe the 17th?
Yeah, I think the 17th is coming up too soon.
Okay. Some of us were concerned about more activity.
Which is all the more reason why we need to kind of talk with the other club to see what they're thinking. But I would like to get a good sense. We don't have to vote on it. Does everybody? Do you think we should try and do this fundraiser in late May, maybe June? Senator Brett wants. So I'll continue to work with Conrad to investigate. So we need to raise more money. We need to raise money to do this. God knows what the orange one is going to do next.
How much money are we looking to raise? Do we have a goal in mind?
Now, I don't have a projection. I'm sorry I did not come with all of the details. But it would be nice to, shame on me. I'd like to break even. The tickets cannot be too expensive, so it would be similar, if not the same as last year. And in order to project the goal, I have to really have a pretty good sense of how many tickets we can sell. How many tickets do you think the club can sell? 50 tickets? 100 tickets?
What is the price? What is the price?
The price is about $30.
Make it like 35 or something?
How much do you sell right?
You know, I just want you.
Yeah, but I don't think it was 50.
No, I said
It
30.
wasn't 100.
It depends. So, if you don't want to do it, let's take a vote. Yes, please.
I'm very confused about this because what I haven't heard is what the budget would be for the fundraiser, how much would it cost? Maybe minimal, not a lot, but what are the expenses and then what's the net? Because I don't see how the club is going to grow if it doesn't have a budget that really is geared towards growth and communications. That's just my.
You'd like to be the next treasurer, but you're
No.
Those are good points. I would not recommend. In the past, it's been profitable, so I would not recommend doing it if it wasn't worth our time. So we sell our things. James, do you have any information?
Yeah, I just looked up, last year we sold a total of 56 tickets. 38 of those were from the Young Men's Democratic Club, so the difference is that's what we contribute.
That's good. So we need to sell more tickets. So that's it.
When we're selling the tickets, what about the idea of who we're supporting for some idea that we're supporting by doing this? You know what I'm saying? That we're the Democrats and we're for what
actually designate the proceeds to some, the money that we raise to some cause. But I would rather be flexible about that. I would rather not do that. Yeah, Edith, and we should probably move on. Edith, go ahead.
So I enjoy the Blue Bay Sox games, which is now Chesapeake.
Chesapeake.
I have enjoyed those games, but I don't look at that, and if it makes money, that's great, but I think it's a camaraderie. I think as a club, our focus, as Kurt has said, should be on democratic politics. And fundraising for political candidates or political causes is not tax deductible, right? So we could affirm certain organizations as worthy causes where individuals and individuals in the club can contribute, but I think we have to be a little cautious of how we are doing our fundraising and doing our donating. I think what this club has had a tradition since the 1970s of doing is registering people to vote, right? And Kurt was awesome at that. And we had 37 million people who were eligible and either failed to register to vote or failed to show up at the polls and vote. And that is why we got the orange votes. So I think if we keep our focus where we've always been, that's what we need to do for the next 2 years until we can get a Democratic majority in Congress and have impeachment number 3. Third time's a charm.
Excellent comments. You're right, it's more of a fundraiser than a fundraiser. We need to do something to kind of get some more life into this group. I mean, everybody here is very, very lively. Everybody here is committed. We've got to find a way to grow the membership. One way is getting together outside of Friday night meeting and doing things together.
This is obviously something that the board needs to really go over. I mean, we're getting some good ideas. And we are having a board meeting, I think, not this Sunday coming up, but the following Sunday. So this is something that we can. I know that Conrad tried very hard to get the board to answer his emails about the dates. And we were going back and forth, and I think only 3 people from the board responded.
That's correct.
So we not only need people to speak up at meetings, we need people to say, okay, I'm going to serve on the board. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. We're not just sit and, you know, and it's true. We need to do democratic things. But right now, Democrats are not doing very well in the polls. Neither are the Republicans. The younger generation wants a third party because they think we're too old to know what is going on. Look around this room. There's an awful lot of bifocals and gray hair. And we need to get some of the younger people, and they don't trust us. They don't think we're doing anything at this point. So this is something the board needs to really wrap itself around, and we can discuss later when we're talking about next steps, which was supposedly the purpose of the meeting after we hear from our legislator.
All right, thank you, Jay. I'd like to move that we accept the treasurer's report so that we can get on the meeting and go to the meat of the forum tonight. Those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report, say aye. Aye. Those in opposed, say no. The ayes have it, so the treasurer's report is accepted. Now, we'll go straight to the meeting, the forum itself. We're supposed to have more public officials here, but I guess they're busy. Delegate Nicole Williams is here to talk about the challenges that we're facing under the Trump policies, especially more particularly on the local governments.
Thanks, Jack. I have all this stuff here to kind of recap the legislative session, which I could do to some degree, and kind of segue into kind of what's going on into DC, because I think one of the things that really overshadowed our legislative session this year, and if you want to do my stuff here, was really what was going on in DC. Constitutionally, the one thing we are required to do during session is to pass a balanced budget. That's it. And that was very challenging this year for a variety of different reasons. Before the session even started, we knew we were going to have roughly a $2.6 billion deficit. And then our projected revenues came in lower than we had anticipated. And so that increased to about $3.3 billion. And then we had the change in administration in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that happened throughout the legislative session is really the needle moving periodically throughout the session. First, it started with cuts or callback of some of our education funding that the state had received that we had already distributed to the counties throughout the state, and a lot of that money was already spent. The federal government was asking for that money back. Then it segued to Medicaid funding and cutting back on some of that, as well as then transportation grant funding that we had anticipated and cutting back on that. And so it just made the session very challenging because as the needle kept moving, we had to keep pivoting, okay, what are we going to do? Because constitutionally, we have to pass a balanced budget, which we were miraculously able to do so with about $2.1 billion in cuts and making tough decisions and deciding to enact various measures to generate revenue of the tune of about $1.3 billion in a variety of different ways. And so it made the session, I would say this was my sixth legislative session. It was probably the toughest session that I've ever experienced in my 6 years. And from my colleagues who have been there a lot longer than I have, their sentiments were exactly the same. And so we know that things are changing in Washington and have changed, and how that is affecting the state of Maryland. And so we are seeing that play out in real time with, earlier we talked about the number of federal workers here in Greenbelt. Prince George's County is home to roughly about 30,000 federal workers, as well as roughly another 40,000 in federal contractors. And so with the cuts that we are seeing with the federal government, that does disproportionately affect Prince George's County probably the most than any other jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. One of the pieces of legislation that we had passed this past session was the catastrophic event account federal government shutdown employee assistance loan fund, which would, if you are a federal employee who was terminated on or after, I think, January 25th, 2025, you can apply for this no interest loan from the state of Maryland that could provide some limited assistance for you temporarily if you're suffering a financial hardship. And so that was one of the pieces of legislation that we passed in an effort to try to be proactive as to what we were seeing going on in Washington. There were a lot of conversations about, just from a values perspective, what is the type of legislation policy-wise we should be advocating for, knowing that we're being watched by the White House. And it seems as though this administration is really targeting states, counties, cities that are enacting policies that they don't agree with, is really the gist of it. And really targeting those jurisdictions that have policies already in place that this administration does not agree with. I think to some degree we still move forward with doing some of those things, holding true to some of our values that we hold near and dear to our heart here in Maryland, because the cuts were coming regardless of the legislation that we passed. And so earlier, I heard in the minutes, there was a discussion at the previous meeting about the Second Look Act, which we did pass. And what that does, it would allow individuals who've been incarcerated for at least 20 years or more, and who were convicted between the ages of 18 and 24, to file a motion with the court asking for the judge to re-examine their sentence. It's not an automatic get out of free jail card or anything along those lines. There are a number of factors that a court has to look at, such as not only the time served, the nature of the crime, their behavior since they've been incarcerated, have they participated in any programs while they've been in incarceration, such as attaining a degree or engaging in any type of vocational training, those types of things is some of the factors that the court has to look at in making a determination whether that person should receive a reduced sentence or not. One of the other pieces of legislation that we passed was we knew that the administration has been really targeting individuals who are not U.S. citizens and really targeting specific groups of individuals here in the United States. And so we had passed House Bill 1222, known as the Maryland Values Act, with regards to immigration enforcement here in the state of Maryland. And the bill that ultimately ended up passing does two things. One requires the Attorney General, we designated certain places to be specifically what we call sensitive locations. So schools, public schools, courthouses, other public facilities, hospitals, those types of things, and requiring the Attorney General to provide guidance to those individuals that are designated in the bill as sensitive places about how those places should respond if someone were to appear from ICE with some type of request. The other piece of the legislation has to do with data privacy and basically limiting the disclosure of any personal information only in situations where there's a judicial warrant that has been presented. So a detainer is not going to be necessarily sufficient in those circumstances unless there's some type of exigent circumstances. And so that was a bill that we were able to pass. I had the honor of being the House sponsor of the bill and the floor leader on the floor debating that piece of legislation this past legislative session. And there's lots of other, I have this whole 90-day report of like over 800 some odd bills we passed in this session. So I'm definitely not going to get into all 800 of the bills. But I did want to bring those up because one, it was mentioned at a previous meeting, and two, I think it does speak to what we're trying to do here as a state to deal with the chaos, honestly, going on in Washington. You know, it's hard to, quote unquote, do business when you have no idea, when the needle keeps moving, you have no idea what the rules are from day to day. And so I think our normal way of advocacy has to be different in this particular time. I had a colleague that was sending out an email asking for all of us to sign on to a joint letter to send to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about a program that Health and Human Services is cutting that provides energy assistance to low-income individuals across the country, the LEAP program, which is one of the many gazillion things that they're cutting. And so, I signed on to the letter, but my question to my colleague was like, yeah, this would have been great any other time. They might actually read the letter and, actually care about the fact that there's legislators from multiple states, Maryland, Virginia, DC, Maine, North Carolina, etc., asking for a reverse of the cuts towards this program. But we're not living in those times. A letter by itself is not going to work anymore. And so one of the things, at least I've observed, I think when, Jay mentioned the president's poll numbers, and the one thing that this person likes is to be liked, which sounds kind of ironic given the way he behaves, but he responds to the negative poll numbers. He actually gets upset about the fact that people are not feeling his policies and not feeling him and those types of things. And I think the more that folks can be extremely vocal about the fact that these policies are not working, I think the more that it does affect his poll numbers, because he loves those types of things, I think are effective. But it's a double-edged sword because he really is attacking any person, group, institutions, jurisdictions that do not believe in the things that he believes in. I think it was yesterday, he signed an executive order attacking Act Blue. When we talk about Democratic fundraising, Act Blue is one of the largest platforms for Democrats to raise money. And to sign an executive order basically attacking Act Blue is basically you're saying that I'm going to attack any business, any individual, any, like I said, jurisdiction, state, city, county, whatever, that is engaging in anything that is against what I'm trying to do. I think our focus needs to be on the midterm elections. And if we can take back the House and the Senate, I agree with you, Edith. Maybe the third time is the charm in terms of actually getting an impeachment of the guy. Yeah, well, right, he did get impeached, he just didn't get convicted by the Senate. And so we can get that majority in the Senate to get the votes necessary for the conviction, as well as flipping back the House to even start the articles of impeachment. I think that would be beneficial. Encouraging your friends, neighbors, especially those who live in red jurisdictions, to reach out to their elected officials. One of the things you talk about what young people are resonating with, I think a lot of young folks are really resonating with what AOC is doing right now, with what Bernie Sanders is doing right now in terms of going to the red jurisdictions and holding town halls in these congressional districts and showing the elected officials that you have constituents here in this district that are not happy with what is going on in DC. And you're being basically complacent with what is going on, if not complicit. And so I think us pushing that, I know that coming up, and I know Emmett, you're on the Democratic Central Committee. I think there's like a wave or a rally that's coming up. I think I saw in the next, about a week or so. And those things are good. Here in Maryland, we're a nice little blue state, but we're not blue everywhere. And so I think if we do those things, doing them here in Prince George's County is great, but I think doing them on the Eastern Shore is even different. We have one Republican congressional member here in Maryland, Andy Harris, who represents the Eastern Shore and the top portion of Maryland, Carroll County, and that portion there, I think part of Hartford County as well, of Maryland. And Andy Harris isn't just a Republican, he's the chair of the Freedom Caucus. And if you're not certain what the Freedom Caucus is, Google it, look it up. They are the right of the right, the extreme of the extreme. And we had a fun time this legislative session in Annapolis because some of our Republican colleagues, right before session started their own Freedom Caucus. So we have a Maryland Freedom Caucus now in the Maryland General Assembly. And it was very interesting this session. They were very organized, very vocal, and I think part of it might have had to do with Andy Harris because he is from here and was probably providing them with resources and the means to be very effective in their organization and things along those lines. And so, it's not just a Washington, D.C. issue, but it is trickling down to all of the states. Everything that you're seeing here in D.C. is trickling down even here in little old Maryland, where they are becoming more divisive, more just extreme in their rhetoric and in their views and the way that they are organizing. That's kind of my thoughts about what we need to be doing. I don't know necessarily attacking here in our own backyard where we know everyone kind of agrees with us. I think we need to be doing more of the attacking like AOC and Bernie Sanders is doing in the Republican areas. To show these individuals that no, you have folks here in your district, who are independents, who are also registered Republicans as well as Democrats that are not feeling what is going on. These tariffs that are about to go into effect are going to affect everybody regardless of your political party. And so, I mean, I feel like I can go on and on and on about all the horrible things that are going on, but, you know, this is supposed to be a dialogue, so we can kind of open it up.
I have a question. Well, first, you know, I want to thank you, Nicole Williams, for all that you do advocating for us. You're doing a great job, countless hours, you know, working with, and just the fact that you are here, you know, talking to us. Maybe we're not the biggest group in the world. There probably are other places that you could be right now. But the fact that you are here is a reflection of your character and your dedication to the people of Prince George's County, State of Maryland, District 22. So once again, thank you so much. I was just wondering, I heard there were close to 3,000 bills that have been introduced during this legislative session. And a lot of those bills never saw the light of day. Some made it through the House, others made it through the Senate, some crossed over. But it just seems like there's so much work to do each session. This year in particular, with, as you mentioned, the needle being moved, the funding, things changing around. Are you going to have to go back into session this fall?
That's a very good point, Emmett. Thank you. I should have brought that up. So there is a strong possibility we may have a special session in the fall. Once, as you know, the federal government is operating on a continuing resolution. We anticipate that will continue, that goes, I think, until September. And so depending on, from a budgetary standpoint, what comes out of that continuing resolution, if it provides more negative funding for us as a state, then we may have to go back into a special session to amend the budget so that we can continue to have a balanced budget. And so we have been told to, anticipate that, don't plan a vacation, late September, early October, which sucks for me, that's my birthday, but whatever. But that's okay though. But that is a very real possibility. And I do want to say, my colleagues were informed of the meeting. I know today is Delegate Martinez's birthday. And so he's actually out of town right now, celebrating his birthday. So I know he expressed to me that's why he wasn't able to be here today. So I just did want to just convey that to everybody.
Hey, with the special session, how does that work? Would you just be looking at the budget, or can you look at bills and pass more bills?
The governor sets the term of the special session. So the way the special session works, typically the governor will call the Maryland General Assembly back in, and it would be for a designated purpose. So the other way to do it is if you have a supermajority vote by both the Senate and the House. Internally, with that supermajority vote, we could bring ourselves back into a special session, saying we're petitioning the governor to call us in for a special session, but that's how that would be called back. It would probably be just on a very limited basis. The last time I think we had to do a special session on the budget was during the O'Malley administration. And at that time, they were brought in for, I think, only a couple of days. So. Hi, Bill.
Good evening. I don't know why we adhere to what has become the sacrosanct, unchallengeable fact of our state constitution. 90 days is not a sacrosanct number. At some point, the legislature might need to be in session, not special session, but in session for 91 days. But 90 guy must come on that 90th day. That's a little silly. And all of us should be doing what we can to make our legislature meet when it's necessary for it to meet. And I challenge one of my delegates to lead the charge with that. I agree with you that, and I agree with everyone in this room, I presume, that we're in for a lot of crap over the next period of time. And if we want to resist that, there are, I guess, at least two ways to do so. Quietly, so that maybe he doesn't see us. Or loudly, so that he knows, in fact, we think what we think of him. And getting back to something that was mentioned earlier in the week, Our Senate president is on record as saying that he did not want 287 to pass because it might put a target on Maryland's back. I don't know that you can do anything about our Maryland State Senate president, but someone that we all know could. With his attitude, Ferguson's attitude, we're essentially trying to hide from Donald Trump, which we won't be able to do anyway. We should not hide from Donald Trump and his minions. We should be outspoken in our opposition to him.
So, yeah, we did not pass the 287G portion of the Maryland Values Act, and just for those who are like wondering what is Bill talking about. So in the original bill, it had a provision that would ban local jurisdictions from entering into what are known as 287G agreements with ICE. 287G agreements are voluntary agreements that local jurisdictions can enter into, and we do have some counties that currently have these agreements in place where they deputize certain individuals within their departments who receive the training. They deputize them as ICE agents. And they don't necessarily receive direct funding from ICE, but they do receive training from ICE. They receive equipment from ICE, basically access to ICE's database directly and those types of things and resources, and to cooperate with ICE. Before the session started, we had 3 counties who had those agreements in place. Frederick County, Hartford County, and I think the third one was Cecil County. During the course of the legislative session, we had 3 more counties come on board: Carroll County, St. Mary's County, and I'm drawing a blank on the third additional county that came on board. And there may be the potential of other counties entering into these agreements, which the administration currently in DC is pushing for jurisdictions to enter into these agreements. This is their way of dealing with immigration enforcement, as opposed to actually getting down into the weeds and actually legislating. This is their solution to a much larger problem. And so the bill did face a lot of opposition, obviously, from those counties that have these agreements in place, or want to put these agreements in place. And so ultimately, while the House side at the General Assembly did pass legislation with that language in there, when it came back from the Senate, it kept coming back from the Senate, they kept striking the language out. And so at the 11th hour, it was either pass something or pass nothing at all as it relates to immigration protection. And we decided to at least pass something, even though it didn't include the banning of these agreements here in the state of Maryland. There are a lot of other, and I'm sorry, I can speak all day on this because I was, like I said, I was the lead sponsor of the bill on the floor leader on it, but there's lots of other states that have either legislatively banned these agreements or have done so either through their court system, their ban, or through referendum. And so it wouldn't be something that would be unique to Maryland if we were to enact that, but the administration in DC has made it very clear that they do plan to withhold funding from what they deem states and counties and cities that are sanctuary counties and cities and states. And so that message has been very loud and clear from the White House. And I think that was kind of where the heart of Bill's comments were as it relates to the Senate president. And so we'll be continuing to work with CASA and with other folks within the coalition on how we move forward from this. But I mean, since I was the sponsor of the bill, obviously I'm in favor of it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it didn't pass. And, you know, anyone has a great relationship with Senator Ferguson, feel free to give him a call.
In terms of the getting a call, a couple of people have told me that anytime we call up a senator or any representative, that there is a record of our calling.
So if we all contact some Republican person, somebody, there would be a record of the 1,000 people that contacted this person with their position.
There should be. So, yeah, Ferguson's a Democrat from Baltimore City, by the way. So on a federal level, they are required to log every phone call, every email, every letter that they receive. On a state level, we are not necessarily required to log that. And that's kind of an office by office decision as to what, you know, how you want to keep track of who's contacting you and in what fashion. Though it is strongly encouraged to do so for a variety of different reasons. So, yeah, you can call, email, write. I know, just generally speaking, you know, folks have a tendency to respond more from individuals within their district than versus individuals who are not necessarily in their district. And so, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Just wondering if we would be more empowered if we made a lot of phone calls.
Well, I will say this. My first year in the legislature, there was, you know, we always talk about taxes, and there was a bill that was proposed my very first year that had to do with adding a sales tax to services. And that included all services across the board, accounting services, legal services, you know, massage services, all types of things across the board. The response that we had received in the Maryland General Assembly was so voluminous. It was so many people had contacted our offices, email, to literally, it shut down the server. Our server literally broke because of the number of email messages we were getting from people across the state against the bill. Our phones were literally ringing off the hook. I remember I was in committee. I came out of committee to go to my office for something. I don't know why I popped in my office. And I pop in my office and my staff is like running around frantic. And I'm like, what is going on? They're like, the email, the server crashed. The server just crashed. Like literally, it was so crazy that it literally, the next day the bill was withdrawn. Yeah, so that can happen, and I've seen it happen, but it just has to be in such a large volume to actually make a difference.
First of all, we should all be thanking Delegate Williams for championing on House Bill 1222, which was the bill to start 287G. And in case people don't know, as a result of her incredible leadership, she was targeted personally by Trump. And so,
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, my mom was not happy when I told her about the White House press release that had my name in it. But, you know, these things happen.
Jerry, use the mic.
I'm hearing an echo, especially from the mics on the table, which makes it hard for me to hear from as far as for the state of Maryland, so we just had a $2 billion budget cut. And my impression over the past few decades is that the Republicans have been yelling, let's reduce taxes, and Democrats have been saying, let's provide more services. Well, it would have been nice if the legislature had figured out a way not to cut the budget. I guess the governor has to go along, like you said, no, I understand. But if the governor, the legislature figured out a way, to raise taxes, just to raise taxes in order to not have to cut the budget, which would have made Maryland sort of a special state that was standing up and saying, we do not want to continue with the budget cut system that's been going on for decades. And my impression now is that actually the top income tax rate is below what it was in the year 2000.
Yeah, so we did make some adjustments to the income tax brackets.
So it's not just that one, but it's in general.
Yeah, and so depending on which tax bracket you're in, you actually may see on the state level of some reduction in your state taxes. The more you make, you may see an increase. And so one of the things in the initial budget we received was really an elimination of an itemization, of being able to itemize all together. And just have a larger standard deduction for everybody across the board. We got a lot of pushback from that, and so the compromise ended up being that individuals who make less than $200,000 will still be able to itemize. Anyone who makes $200,000 or above, the ability to itemize will reduce, it will reduce proportionate to your tax bracket above that income point. And so that was the compromise that was entered into as related to personal income taxes. There was a lot of other measures that we put on the table. Folks might have heard we are enacting a 3% digital tax. This is not unique to Maryland. There are a lot of other states that have some type of digital tax on IT services, streaming services, other digital services. I think DC does, and a number of other states across the country. And so that was something that we did enact in an effort to not cut as much as, we make the cuts as minimal as possible. But we did make some cuts. I mean, one of the things, though, that we tried to do was stay true to our values. And so one of the things you might have heard anecdotally was the blueprint is costing us a lot of money. Well, actually, with the budget, the blueprint was not the reason for our structural deficit with this budget, contrary to what was being put out there in the media, and I think that's been put out there a lot by our Republican colleagues, to be honest with you. And so we did not make any cuts to the blueprint in this budget. Initially, there were proposed cuts to community schools. There were proposed cuts as it relates to teacher training times and things like that. We, in what we call the birth of the Budget Reconciliation Act, or whatever that stands for, we restored those cuts. We said, no, we are not going to cut back community schools at all in the state. And especially here in Prince George's County, where I think we have probably the second largest number of community schools in the state, we have seen the improvements at the schools that have been designated as community schools here in Prince George's County. We have seen test scores improve at those schools. The wraparound services that they provide to not just the students, but the families of the students that go to those schools are much needed and have been great. Just has been a game changer for a lot of those communities. And so I had a fundraiser right before session started, and the speaker was there, my guest, and I didn't even talk to the speaker about this beforehand. But I basically stated flat out, like, I'm not voting for a cut to community schools. And that was before session started. I was like, that's a no, that's a no-go. And luckily, I wasn't the only person who felt that way. And so we pushed back on that because we value the importance of that. The other thing we did not cut, and I know, Jerry, you've been in and over the years about the vacancies that we had in our state agencies, increasing the number of state employees that we have. And so that is something that we continue to fund in the budget, that we pass, continuing to fill those vacancies that we have in a lot of our state agencies. And in addition to that, the governor, if you go to his website, his official website, you will see that we are providing, and I can't remember the bill number, but there was a bill that would basically accelerate the hiring process for any federal employees who were laid off by the government again after January of this year to expedite their applications that they're applying for a state position. And so that was another piece of legislation that we had passed this election cycle, this session, we understand the value that our federal employees bring to the table. My mom worked for the federal government for over 30 years. And so I know personally the value that federal employees bring to the table. They are public servants, they are patriots, they work hard for our country. And they can bring a skill set that Donald Trump don't want them, we will take them here in Maryland. piece for you here in state government. And I've seen folks who used to work for the federal government now work for the state of Maryland. I ran into a friend of mine, Admiral T, who some folks may know here in this room because he served previously as the head of the Department of Environment here in Prince George's County, left to go to Montgomery County, then left for the EPA and was working for the federal government. And of course, you know, when things would get crazy, now he is working for the State Department of the Environment. And so we are so happy to have his expertise coming back on board to service on the state level. It was so good to see him in Annapolis during the legislative session. So those are some of the things we're doing.
Jay?
First of all, I want to thank you personally and for everyone here. We tried again for the third year to keep the state funding the MAGLA, even though the MAGLA will insist that they don't need state money, but we tried, and we'll just keep trying again, because unfortunately, MAGLA, as ugly things, is rising to the surface. Doesn't help the governor back as he was saying, he was on the Meet the Press, and he got excited about this new squeaky toy that was running through Japan. So thank you for doing that. Also, the $200,000 bond issue that you got for replacement, helping Greenbelt to replace one of our elevators at the community center. So even though there was very little money to grab, we did claw some money in place. Someone asked me just the other day, well, why is there such a deficit in the budget? You know, Governor Hogan left us with a huge surplus. So why is there a deficit? And I had to inform this reporter, a native person, who was voting Republican, of course. Well, you know why there was a surplus? It's because he let a lot of vacancies to occur in state agencies. When someone retired or someone left, he just didn't fill those positions. So of course it was a savings and a surplus, and when Governor Bush came in, he had to replace those vacancies, which caused a bit of a deficit. And she said, oh, I didn't know that. And it's like, we don't publicize what the other side does. I don't think any should know it. I have a feeling that half the people here did not know that because Hogan's such a nice guy. He survived cancer. You know, he's a jolly old soul. And he didn't know what he did to undermine the whole state system. Am I correct in my supposition?
You are correct, Jay. The Hogan administration did not fill what we call pins, but vacancies whenever they occurred. And so, therefore, a lot of agencies were able to project a surplus because they weren't necessarily paying out various money in terms of payroll benefits and things like that. The other reason Hogan had a surplus was because we had a Democratic president named Joe Biden who enacted, talk about ARPA funds, who enacted all of these measures to bring a lot of federal money to the states across the country in COVID relief. And so that money that we had from the federal government during the Hogan administration also was another reason why we had a budget surplus during those years. We don't have that money anymore. As you know, that money...
Where did it go?
We had to spend that money. And so that money is spent in a variety of different ways, whether it was rental assistance. We had a Maryland Maryland rental assistance program that we also funneled down to the counties. We also had a homeowners relief program to assist individuals who might have fallen behind with mortgage or other payments for homes that they had. It was spent in a lot of different ways. It was spent on infrastructure improvements with the Biden Infrastructure Act. And so you probably saw all these wonderful signs with Larry Hogan's name on them all throughout the state. I know there was one over in the school in Hyattsville. But all of these school construction projects and road construction projects, that was paid for money that we got from the federal government under the Biden administration. And so all of that money is now gone. have a structural deficit? Because I've gotten that question before, like, how did we get here? There's a couple things. One, during COVID, we had passed a child care grant scholarship program. We saw during COVID a lot of child care providers closing up shop for a variety of different reasons. And we were losing child care providers left and right here in the state of Maryland. And so then when the economy opened back up and people wanted to go back to work, the number of child care facilities and placements that we had pre-COVID was nowhere near the number that we had after COVID. And so we enacted the scholarship fund to encourage more people, one, to provide financial assistance for individuals to be able to pay for child care, because if you all, those who have children or grandchildren, that's how much child care costs, it's about the price of a mortgage monthly. Like, it's super expensive to pay for child care these days. And so we enacted this during COVID to assist individuals to be able to go back to work. Wonderful program. Well, the program was a little more popular than we had anticipated. We didn't know how dire the situation truly was. And we ended up having more individuals apply for the program than we had originally anticipated, to be quite honest. The other reason was with regards to Medicare and Medicaid. And we expanded, as you know, Maryland, we have our own exchange under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, which they are still continuously trying to repeal, even though so many people are now receiving care under the Affordable Care Act. We expanded the individuals here in the state of Maryland who can participate in the state exchange that we have here in Maryland under the Affordable Care Act. And the anticipated cost for that kind of exceeded what we had originally projected. And so those were some of the main drivers as to how we got into the structural deficit that we were facing going into this legislative session. The other thing that we knew we needed to tackle, we started tackling last session and did some more this session, was really the depletion of our transportation trust fund. Under Larry Hogan, he did things like reduce tolls to go to Ocean City, across the Chesapeake Bay, and reduce tolls here, which people was like, oh, this is so great, it's cheaper for me to go to the beach. But those tolls is the money that goes to pay our transportation trust fund. And when those tolls get reduced, we have less money to our transportation trust fund, which means less money to pay for road improvement, for bridges, for all of those things that we love to see because we all have potholes. We had less money for all of that. So you see bridges that have like these horrible rates, we just didn't have the money to pay to get them all repaired. And then on top of that, we had the Key Bridge collapse last year, which was also a toll roll. And so that's millions of dollars that we're not receiving every month now because we're not receiving the tolls for those cars that used to go across the Key Bridge. So that's my long-winded way of answering. That's sort of how we got here, Chad.
How many more questions do you want to take?
You know, I'm your Ellen. I'm here as long as you have me. Yeah, it's right. But whatever. Maybe 2 to 3 more questions.
So I'm going to think your occupation is
bill did not pass. There is a lawsuit pending that was filed by the state of Maryland and Baltimore City against Block. And so one of the many things our Attorney General is doing right now, that lawsuit is currently pending for the exact same reasons that the bill was produced, is to get Block to change the design of their guns and other manufacturers who copy the designs of Block handguns, to change the design of their handguns so that they're not easily converted into automatic pistols. And so while the legislation didn't pass, I'm sad about that, the effort is still moving forward because we do have a lawsuit that is pending in federal court right now. It is probably a good thing for the bill not to have passed and let the lawsuit run its course, play itself out, and then if we need to come back legislatively, we can do that at a later date. So I know that's what's going on with that particular bill. And then I'm not certain that, I don't think the other two bills passed. I know there was the one bill with regards to add the one tax with, related to bullets and those types of things. That bill did not pass. There was a notification literature bill that I think moms or the gun advocates were also pushing for that didn't pass as well. So that's, yeah, we're on that, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm curious about
Purple line.
and just really in broad strokes, what I'm understanding Hogan's responsibility involved in the federal rights as well as the disclosure of the
Bless you. So the purple line should have been completed by now, but as you know, it's not. For a variety of reasons. Part of it was some of the lawsuits that were pending, but also part of it was there were costs. Well, one, Hogan, when he came into office, modified a lot of the design around the purple line in an effort to quote unquote reduce costs. What ended up happening is that then the state got into a contractual dispute with the consortium of companies that were building the purple line. And that actually halted the construction for a period of time because of this contractual dispute about payment for the cost overruns. Hogan didn't want to pay the contractors the money for the cost overruns. I don't know if this sounds familiar about any other one person who doesn't like to pay their contractors. But anyway, didn't want to pay the contractors for the cost overruns and was disputing the cost overruns, which caused a 6-month delay in the construction, which when the current governor came in, we ended up still having to pay it. And bring in a new contractor to pick up the pieces because the other contractor pulled out because of the disputes. And so, you know, if you ever come in and with a project that's already has started, first of all, it's going to take you time to get up to speed to figure out what was already done. And now you've got to go back over somebody else's work, which is essentially what this contractor has done. The good news is that the purple line's almost here. They're actually, if you're up in New Carrollton, you might have seen some of the trains moving back and forth. They're testing the tracks out. The bridge over North Avenue is just about completed. And so, you know, I know it's been a very painful moment, especially for those who drive along this highway, North Avenue, the potholes. I know there's been moments where I thought my tire was about to burst. But it is just, it's hanging here, it's almost over, you know, and I think this goes back to Jay's point with regards to the magnet. I don't think we're anti-mass transit. It's just that I think for the most part, we want to be smart around the mass transit that we build here in the state of Maryland and especially here in Prince George's County. And I had high hopes at the beginning of the session about the magnet bill because there have been some changes in leadership with regards, at least on the House side, with regards to the committee that the bill sits on. And there were a lot more members of that committee, to be honest with you, that was they were very favorable towards the bill. And they had one Republican that was just like, yeah, I'm with the whole, like, we should be spending state politics. I was like, okay, I'll take it. So, you know, to push back on the appropriation of state money towards the construction of the mag lab. You know, my colleagues, I have a number of colleagues that think we should be investing that money into BART. We should be investing that money into the MTA. The governor also still wants his red line, which I think that's out the window now with this administration, but that's a separate conversation. I just don't see how the project moves forward still, especially when you have an administration in DC that is rolling back so much funding as it relates to transportation projects. I just don't see how this continues to be a viable thing, so.
All right, and with that, I'd like to thank Delegate Williams for all his
So up here, I have some of my end of session letters here in the envelopes. Feel free to grab one if you didn't already receive one. It just kind of gives a nice little summary about the session, talks about some of the legislation I just mentioned. It also talks about a lot of the bond money we were able to bring back to District 22. Jay mentioned the money for the elevator here for the Greenbelt Community Center. It was a really tough budget year. We weren't able to necessarily get bond funding for all of the projects here in the district, for all the requests that we received, but we were able to at least bring some money back for core projects such as stormwater restoration in Riverdale Park, and other measures as well. So feel free to take a letter on your way out. I had to get rid of them anyway, so thanks.
I haven't had a chance to look at what I picked up Saturday. Brian already picked that up?
Did you already? Yes, the same ones we had at the town hall last Saturday. That's correct.
Okay, now we're going to the wish boxes. If anyone wants to donate something here and make a wish, move forward, come forward and you can speak.
I can talk loud. I'll use my middle school teacher voice. So I'm going to throw wish box in. So my parents are here visiting from Colorado. They're getting a full experience in Greenbelt this weekend. We've been at various events. We'll be at a bunch of events tomorrow. And I'm hoping that eventually they will be Greenbelt residents. But so there's my
Trying very hard to think of something positive to talk about or to wish. And then it occurs to me that we have to thank Harvard. All the colleges are starting to go along with the Orange Menace's, decision or decree, and Harvard stood up. And now the other colleges and universities are finding if they have a coalition, maybe we don't have to worry about it as much. That's one good thing. Then there's another good thing, and I think this will cause the judges perhaps to start thinking about a coalition. There was a judge, and I don't know if it was California or what state, she was arrested.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
She was arrested because she was hindering the arrest of an immigrant that the ICE folks had come to the courthouse to grab, to disappear. And she said, no, he's before me right now, it's a case, and you can wait in the lobby for him. Well, she did whatever she had to do, and he went out the back door. And so she was arrested for hindering ICE. And the Orange Menace has said, this is a wonderful thing, and I hope more judges are arrested. Does this sound really familiar? Like 80, 90 years ago? Let's disappear the Jews. Let's disappear the mentally disabled. Let's disappear the lawyers. Let's disappear the judges. let's disappear the professors, and then there's no one to help you when someone comes to make you disappear.
Well said.
Yeah, it's interesting that Jane mentioned 80 years ago, because I was in East London 80 years ago, with seeing the results of what happens when someone who is originally elected is able to go their own way and just take over. And the fact, I don't want to see that happening again, but unfortunately, it's looking that way. Now, it's very interesting to see that one of the books that is now being in demand is The Diary of Anne Frank. That might be worth reading again.
I'm Michael Hartman. Laura and I were late because we went to a meeting of the CORES. I want to let you know about it. CORES, the Collaborative Opportunities for Resilient and Enduring Solutions, was created by Melissa Airwright, and it's a group of Greenbelt citizens, residents, who might want to join in an effort of resiliency similar to the work that Transition Towns did during peak oil during the 1990s. But it's a community task force recently formed to provide solutions in the face of layoffs, funding slashes, and institutional uncertainty at the federal level, most especially as it relates to the Greenbelt community. As I said, it was initiated by Melissa Airwright, and we are neighbors coming together to create at least 100 solutions in 90 days. And currently building solutions, the big ones, the little ones, and everything in between, that are connected in one way or another to the following things: jobs, workforce development, housing, food affordability, healthcare and well-being, energy, utilities, education, environmental, transit, and support, emotional and support. And so I invite you to join CORES, and it's like CORES, it's an acronym, again, for collaborative opportunities for resilient and enduring solutions. And it's a way that we all can get together as neighbors and residents of Greenbelt to find solutions for the things that we're all facing as a community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My wonderful sum of dollars going for good causes to continue our opposition that really derives from our conscience and from our sense of decency in opposition to the president. And further, you will see actually over there a glass of margarita. And the reason, with the help of Sylvia Lewis, we went to the liquor store after I had my conversation. I was so So anyway, so we have a margarita, and that is a tribute to not only Senor Garcia, thank goodness he sang it in there, and also to Senator Van Hollen. And that wonderful quote that he had, just paraphrasing, because I'll probably mess it up, but basically the point that he was raising was that if you take away the rights, and it makes me emotional, of one person, you take away the rights of everyone. So I was really proud of Maryland and Senator Van Hollen and Senator Garcia as well. So we got to keep up the good fight.
council along. How many of you participated in the wave, the signs 3 weeks ago?
Hands off.
Hands off. Yeah.
There's another one last week.
There was another one last week. But I think these are really important. I think that collectively we do need to stand up as individuals and show how we feel. So Kurt shared this information with me. This on the 30th of April, there is going to be, that's a Wednesday evening from 5:30 to 6:30. There are going to be some sign waves put on by the Maryland Democratic Party. But they're right here in Prince George's County. One is going to be at the Greenbelt Metro. Another is going to be at the Carrollton Metro Station. And the third is down at Branch Avenue. So, you know, the hands-off rally, the event last week, they're an example of what we can do. But, you know, for these to be successful, they can't just be one-offs. We have to, really, it would be great if we could be doing these things every single weekend. And that is something that the club could actually try and coordinate. I know with hands-off, we were on the Spelman overpass. But I was driving around earlier that same day, and there were people all up and down Wisconsin Avenue between Beltway and East West Highway. Mostly older people out there waving signs, because I guess they didn't want to go downtown. But I want to plant the idea that you know, perhaps there's more that we can do, you know, with our bodies, and not just on the overpass and Greenbelt, maybe on Greenbelt Road, maybe other places where a lot of people pass by. So that's what my $5,000 will do, to say something about that. Once again, that's planned for April 30th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And go to Greenbelt Metro Station to Carrollton Metro or Branch Avenue Metro. So Kurt, thank you for bringing this.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Laura Roosevelt, and I was also at the chorus meeting, just running late. This may be premature, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's great that we've been going to the Spelman overpass and going to different places. How many people have been going downtown, like in front of the Supreme Court or any of the other places? Anybody?
I did on the clip.
And has anybody gone to either Silver Spring or Rockville to stand in front of a Tesla? Nobody? Tesla protesters here? Or are you familiar with what's going on? What?
No, I'm just saying, it seems like it's.
And it's definitely working. Michael and I participated in the call last night, though. The people that have been organizing those rallies would like to up the ante. And this is what my request. And I don't know which of the city council members I'll ask to maybe spearhead this. They are proposing that in every city council there be a resolution that the city or the county or the state, I'm not sure at which level, would be divesting from any stocks that are owned by Mr. Musk. That would be Tesla, Twitter, SpaceX, and Zero, I think. I believe is another one. Anyway, they laid out the way this would happen is that one of the city council members would propose this divestment plan. I don't know, this is why it's premature, because we need to speak to Bertha Damon. I don't know how the city invests their money, if they actually do invest their money. And for example, I think the city of Greenbelt uses the state retirement plan, so it would be out of the state. And we already were lucky that we have our state comptroller, Lynn Learman. She's already divested the state retirement fund from any fossil fuels. That's my understanding. It was like one of the first things she did when she got into office. So it would be a matter of figuring out. And also, I don't know when you all get money from the county or the state, if you invest it temporarily before you spend it, or whether you just keep it in the bank. You know, so I don't know. Again, I'm like grasping at straws here. But the idea is that we need to up the ante. It's not enough to just hold a sign, but to actually have people not just dump their cars, but dump their stocks. And This was a national call, so they're asking people in every state, in every city, in every college and university. And I'm sure you all know, I mean, divestment campaigns are like the oldest thing, I think was done for doing apartheid in South Africa and so forth. So just divesting from certain sectors obviously has a very, very large impact. So maybe afterwards I'll go with a couple of the council members and see who thinks that this is like the kind of thing that would pique your curiosity. So again, my name is Laura Roosevelt, and I don't have $5,000, but I do have $5.
Just as an update on the course, you can read more about course in the April 10th edition of the news review. And I will give you information on how to join and stuff. April 10th news review. Thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Jerry, do you want to?
Oh, Jerry.
So Trump has been taking the government apart. Trump has been taking the government apart, and he's been doing it in a very crude way, and which has resulted in, well, like many of his voters actually losing their jobs, just like everyone else lost their jobs. And so when the Republicans were holding town meetings in their districts, they were getting a lot of strong feedback about, no, we don't like that about jobs, of course. That was being balanced by what happens when our representative, Ivy, held his town meeting, and people said very clearly, we don't feel that the Democratic Party is still protecting us. And so both sides are getting it. I think now it's probably getting to the point where maybe our side is winning. And I hope that happens. I have no idea what will happen. For Plan B, I'm going to endorse Republican David Brooks's recent statement that we need a specific offers. Or at least, the National Democratic Party calling for a general strike.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about the future. So today happens to be my daughter's birthday, and I consider my children the future. And Sunday is my son's birthday, and he's now got a son, so I have a grandbaby. So my daughter Chrissy is 27, my son Howard will be 25, and so they are fully adults now. And my son's son is named Blue Region, so how much more democratic can you be? So.
Okay. Any motion to adjourn? Okay. The meeting is adjourned.